So Nishant, in our previous episode, we were talking about if you're investing in a big screen and you're looking out for that 75, 85 inch LED TV, you will have to shell out a lot of cash. Somewhere,
a lot of it.
Yeah, somewhere upwards of 5, 6 or even 15 lakhs if you're going for the 4K versions.
Absolutely.
Now, we were talking about if you're buying this as a second screen, buying a home theater setup might make sense because it'll be at half the price. What do you think of that?
I completely agree with your thoughts, Anand. In fact, in case you are in the market and you want to spend a sizable amount of money, like you said as an example, say about 8 lakhs, I think you should invest in a projector and a much bigger screen, because if you have a projector, you have the flexibility of going down from say 60 inches as the lowest point to maybe about 300 inches, if your wall or your screen supports that. So you have a lot more flexibility, a lot more range depending on in which room you want to place the projector. If you have a dedicated purpose-built home theater room, I think it's perfectly apt.
So for lesser money, you can get an entire home theater setup, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So what are the elements that you feel are absolutely necessary?
Well, for a home theater, if you have a room, which I think that would be the first point. I mean, if you can spend about 15 lakhs on a home theater system, try and devote a room or at least a space in the room for a dedicated home theater, because that will just change the entire equation. You'll be a lot more immersed and involved into the experience as opposed to people moving in and out and having a common area. So the room is very important. Apart from that, obviously the hardware. So you have the projector. A screen is very, very important, which a lot of people overlook because people just assume that if it's a projector, you can project on a blank white wall.
Yeah.
But I think that's really bad, and it's very, very poor installation and very lazy.
Yeah.
So a screen is very important. The hardware like the amplifiers, the speakers, and a good source, because again people overlook the fact that you need a good source to feed into the projector.
Let's keep a budget of say 3 to 4 lakhs, because we are out here to prove a point that within that kind of money you can get a decent setup. Let's look at that kind of setup within 3, 4, 5 lakhs, and then why don't you suggest after that your ideal setup?
I think I'd start with the BenQ W1070 Plus, which is also wireless ready and also has a great feature called side projection, which means that you don't need to have a purpose-built room like we were talking about earlier. You can actually place a projector on a side stand or a desk and still have a completely centralized picture. So I think it's a great starting point. It's a great projector for about 1,10,000 retail. You can have an amplifier or an AV receiver, maybe by Onkyo, maybe the TX NR838, which is I think another about 75,000 rupees. And then you can have, I mean, obviously in terms of speaker choices, there's a plethora of options out there.
Absolutely.
But I think a good starting off point would be maybe the Cambridge Audio Aero. You can get a complete 5.1 system for under a lakh. So you have about 80,000 per piece, and then you have about 40 or 50,000 chump changes lying around. You can buy a good source. Maybe you can buy an Oppo, or you can buy the regular Pioneer or the Sony options.
These are Blu-ray players, of course.
These are all Blu-ray players, which will give you full HD. They are not 4K ready, but I don't think there's any content out there for 4K. So people should just hang on and not just jump on the 4K bandwagon.
If you remember, for a long time, the PlayStation 3 was a very strong Blu-ray player, obviously coming from the Sony bandwagon, the whole Blu-ray disc. Now, what do you think of the PlayStation as of now? Because at least for the gamer, does it make more sense to go in for a PlayStation?
Absolutely, it does. I mean, if you want to use your system as a home theater and a gaming system, I think the PS3 is a great option. I just feel, in my opinion, that a lot of people who are not gamers and also want their system to be used by other family members, the PlayStation interface is not the most intuitive or maybe inviting, whereas the regular controller is something they're more familiar with, is more inviting, is more appealing.
So that's almost touching 3 lakhs. What about a screen? How important is a screen?
I'd say, I mean, irrespective of the projector you're buying and you're going in for, a screen is as important. And I think within that very tight budget that we have for 3 lakhs, we fit in everything else. And a screen, I think, from a brand called Gala Light, which is an Indian version of a known brand called Da Light, you can easily get for 15 to 20,000 bucks in the market.
Let's talk about the sweet spot in buying a home theater setup. I know you can go all the way up to a crore and a half if we left you to it. If we left you to it. But what would you think is a sweet spot in terms of where you get the right bang for your buck? You have a system that you're not only happy about, you can flaunt it, and it should do you well for a couple of years.
Well, in my sweet spot, if I had about 25 lakhs, I would start with a projector brand called Wolf Cinema, which is actually an adaptation of a JVC projector, but they do their own, they have their own magic dust on the JVC, and they call it the Wolf Cinema, which is a higher end brand. So I'd start with the Wolf Cinema, maybe the SDC8 as I remember.
Is it a 4K?
No, it's not a 4K, it's full 1080p, but like we were discussing earlier, maybe it's too premature for 4K. But I mean, if you have to take a call, I'd rather put my money on the best full HD possible right now as opposed to entry level 4K. For the speakers, I'd go with the B&W MT60, which is a very cute subsat system, but very high performance at the same time. So in case you have a huge projector and a huge screen, something like the Wolf can accommodate, you won't need to devote additional floor space for big speakers. These can go on the wall, they can be wall mounted.
What about the Source?
The Source, I mean, if you're in that budget, the Oppo, the BDP 105, it's the industry standard. I mean, in fact, every hi-fi show that you go to uses the Oppo Blu-ray player as a source.
What about the amp?
For that price, again, the options are very wide, but my personal choice would be maybe from a Yamaha or a Pioneer, and at that price, you can also afford to maybe, go a notch higher and have a Dolby Atmos system at home. And if you can afford this, I think the Pioneer SCLX 88 or 87, they are Atmos certified. There's a Yamaha as well called the 3030. Both of these amplifiers are in the 1.5 lakh rupee region, and they're both Atmos certified.